We are ready to start the Granbury City Council regular meeting. It is 6 p.m. Tuesday, December the 20th, 2022. We're at Granbury City Hall, 116 West Bridge Street, Granbury, Texas 76048. So the meeting is now called to order. I'd like to start our meetings with the invocation. I have Mr. Terry Lubin, who is the Hood County Sheriff's Department, filling in for Ms. Darla Lubin, and we give her our best, have her get well quickly. Pastor.
Heavenly gracious Father, creator of all things, Lord, we give you praise and honor for each and everything that you have blessed us with. Lord, by your word, you have promised that you will always be with us and that you will never leave us. So, Lord, we acknowledge and welcome your presence here tonight. Lord, I pray for insight and wisdom and courage and resolve, Lord, for the council who makes decisions. And I pray, Lord, for all of us that you guard our thoughts, the words that we speak, the actions that we take, so that all things glorify you. Lord, we're thankful for the season. We're thankful for your Son, Jesus Christ, who is the reason of our celebration. Thank you, Lord, for all things, and it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's not cold yet, but I do hope that each of you are aware of what's coming our way and are preparing for that onslaught, if you will. We have item number 4, it's proclamation and presentation. City Council, City Manager issue encouraging statements and recognize city staff. Mr. Kaufman.
I don't have anything prepared for tonight, except I want to thank everybody for being here. I see some city team members here. Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate your hard work and all that you do for us throughout the year, and Merry Christmas to you.
Mr. Wadley.
This was mentioned last time about all the decorations in the city, so Aaron, but you know, businesses, the town looks great. I came back last night from Houston and drove through Cleburne, and their park is nice. Ours is out of the park. Literally. No, it's just I just love walking around, driving around, seeing all the decorations here. It's an awesome time of the year. I guess now we're going to have some weather that matches the season. But anyway, everybody stay warm.
Other?
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just want to just say real quick, just want to thank all the city employees for all that they do each day to make our city a great place to work and live, and thank you all for being here tonight. Also, just want to take a second, just thank all the volunteers that serve on our boards, our commissions, Visit Granbury, and we've got a whole host of people who volunteer in our city that help make it a great place and really support all the efforts and activities in our city, and just say thank you.
Other? One of the yes, Mr. Rodriguez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry.
I just want to say thank you to the staff as well. I think it's just important for y'all to hear that, and thank you for being patient with us as the city council. I know it's not easy just seeing us up here make decisions, and then you see a year go by with nothing, no compensation, no raise. But hopefully, we've worked through those issues. We've seen what we could do, and we've heard options. And hopefully the council tonight can help improve the new year for you and your families. And we want to bless you and say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Okay, thank you. Don't let me step on anyone else. Mr. Corrigan, Ms. Burwell. Okay. Mr. Hafe had asked to speak at this point in time as public comment on the agenda item 4.1, And while he's coming to the stand, let me say that I get a compliment daily. It's not every now and then. I get a compliment daily on something that's going on with the city that the citizens want me to see. And this week, it's one of these things that people walk by every day and they don't see, but the people who are there do see it. And it was pointed out to me that the excellent work that's done on the woodwork around the windows on the Opera House is just, it's perfect. You go back and I said, no, is there something, did they not do something? Oh, no. He said, it is absolutely perfect. It's beautiful and perfect. So I appreciate the craftsmen and the workmanship that you guys not only bring to the party, but you're able to put out there for others to see. Thank you so much. Mr. Hay?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Councilperson, City Manager. I really like the staff appreciation and recognition on the agenda because it's so important for everyone to know that they're appreciated. And I come tonight not to talk about the staff because you know I love the staff and I praise them all the time, but I want to talk about the 7 of you up there who set the tone for this city. The manager, the city manager, the councilpersons, and the mayor. You people are the leaders of our city, and the way you conduct yourselves on the dais with your respectful consideration of the issues before you and the respect you show to one another really sets the tone and the culture throughout the city and models the behavior that all the city employees follow then in dealing with the citizens of Granbury. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for how you do it. We appreciate it, and Merry Christmas.
You have more time.
I've said all that I have to say. I mean, I could go on gushing for a few more minutes if you like, Mayor, but you all are great and I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. You know, y'all are aware of our staffing shortages in different departments, and had a meeting this morning with Kenny Causey, and he spent half the night worrying about something and got up about 4:45 and went to work and figured out a way to get some help and solve a problem. We had an area of electrical failure that caused the dental office to be out of business for 2 days, and he reached out to Tri-County Electric. Pamela's here. Thank you for coming tonight, and Ms. Green. And reached out to his counterpart over there, and they worked out a memorandum of understanding for emergency repairs and assistance, and we got that executed by probably about 9:15 this morning, and their crews came today and been working together. I don't know the outcome of all that, but it just goes to show you that there's people that are working behind the scenes to try to fix things, sincerely working with other people, and how good it is to have Tri-County as our neighbor that's willing to step up and help us out while we're a little shorthanded. And so it's pretty exciting. We hope to come up with another agreement like this to bring before y'all in the future for disaster relief and things like that we can prepare for in the future. So kind of opened the door, and hats off to all you guys for taking care of business behind the scenes in ways that we never hear or see about. If I hadn't had that meeting with Kenny this morning needing to sign that document, I wouldn't have known what he's been through in the last 24 hours. So thank you all again for all that you do for us. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Thank all of you, and Mr. Hay, for make sure the credit goes where credit due. Ms. Burwell implemented this, recommended this comments proclamation for our city staff, and we've kept it in place ever since she recommended it. And I agree with you. We have to say, we don't have to say, but we need to say thank you, because you are the folks out there that make things happen on a day-to-day basis, and it doesn't always get recognized. This dais does recognize it sincerely. So we'll go to public comments on agenda items for non-public hearing agenda items. And Ms. Walker, I only had Mr. Hafe. Did we have anyone else? No. So no one else signed up to speak on that, so I'll save us a little time. We'll go to the consent agenda. And the consent agenda, all items on the consent agenda are routine. Previously discussed items will be approved with one motion. However, should a member of the City Council wish to discuss any item, said item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered under the deliberation agenda. Does anyone have a need to move the minutes? No? Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Corrigan?
Second.
Mr. Rodriguez? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I believe that passes 6-0. The deliberation agenda, number 7.1, is consider approving a new employee compensation plan for the City of Granbury and adopting ordinance number 22-70, amending the operating budget for the general fund and utility fund for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. Mr. Kaufman, if you walk us through this.
Sure, it's my pleasure to be able to get to this point tonight. We've been working towards this for almost a year, and this time I'll turn it over to our Deputy City Manager, Michael Ross, which also handles our human resource component of management. So take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council. As you may recall, City Council approved an employee compensation study as part of the 2022 fiscal year budget. The city subsequently prepared a request for proposals and sent those out to target companies. But unfortunately, the city only received one submittal, and the proposed amount was almost 3 times the budgeted amount. Next, the city contacted other cities in Texas to determine who they would recommend so that we could select the best consultant for Granbury. After that exercise, we ultimately selected Matt Weatherly with Public Sector Personnel Consultants, or PSPC, to perform our compensation study. PSPC originated in 1972, and they specialize in these services, and they have implemented classification and compensation plans for more than 1,100 public employers nationwide, including more than 325 municipal employers and more than 50 Texas government employers. Their recently completed projects include the cities of Ennis, Weatherford, Mansfield, Frisco, Plano, Allen, Irving, Dallas, Addison, Highland Park, University Park, Denton, Bedford, Wautuga, Saginaw, Victoria, Nacogdoches, Longview, Live Oak, Cedar Park, Pflugerville, Killeen, Taylor, Kerrville, Waco, Sugar Land, and the Woodlands Township. The city chose 12 benchmark cities for our comparison based on close geographic proximity, as well as those with similar population growth patterns, number of employees, and approximately budget values in the DFW Metroplex. The city's goal was to become, or is to become, an employer of choice, and was to bring our employees to the 75th percentile of market salaries. I'll give you a brief explanation on the compensation percentiles. The 75th percentile is the highest quarter of salaries for the job based on the benchmark cities are above the 75th percentile. The middle half of people in this job have salaries that fall between the 25th and 75th percentile. The 50th percentile, in contrast, is the lower half of salaries for the job based on the benchmark cities. They fall below the 50th percentile, while the upper half are above it. The 50th percentile is most widely used as a measure of the middle of the possible pay values for a job. In July of 2022, PSPC completed the Granbury study and provided a comprehensive employee compensation recommendation to staff. The study found that it would cost more than $2.3 million to bring the city's total employee compensation package to the 75th percentile in January of 2023 for the remaining 9 months of this fiscal year. Staff was not comfortable with that amount as a recommendation to council, so further analysis was done. After the completion of that review, the final recommendation is to move forward with a 66th percentile for a cost of $1.7 million. The goal would be to obtain the 75th percentile in a few years, City Council willing. Please note that it is the intent to include all employee positions listed in the 2023 fiscal year budget with this item, and all are included in this recommended budget amendment in front of you. Additionally, of course, the city manager must make changes from time to time during each fiscal year based on the overall operational needs of the city. And to reconcile these changes and review new recommendations going forward, An updated employee compensation plan will be included as part of the City Council budget approval process each year. That is the background on this agenda item. Now please allow me to introduce Matt Weatherly from Public Sector Personnel Consultants for the presentation of the Granbury Compensation Study. Take it away, Matt.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
I think so. Everybody here?
All right. I will do my best to share my presentation here and move fairly quickly. Appreciate Mr. Mayor, members of council, city manager, Michael, certainly appreciate the opportunity to be with you, bouncing around airplanes, which is not what I wanted to do this week, but I appreciate being able to at least join you virtually and share in the discussion a little bit. Our scope of work called for the conduct of a compensation and benefits survey, which was completed over the summer. We have taken that information and proposed updated salary ranges or pay ranges for every position. Michael had alluded to some implementation discussion around both costing as well as a kind of a market philosophy. So that'll be incorporated in my slides this evening. As mentioned, there were 12 agencies that were selected as a kind of a baseline comparison. Now, when we do a salary survey, generally we're asking two major questions. The first is how do we look compared to those we're competing with? And right behind that is where do we wish to be or where do we need to be in order to recruit and in order to retain? The agencies that were selected are by and large competitors, agencies where the city has experienced a loss of workforce. Employees have left to go to several of these cities at all levels. It's been a very interesting couple of years, both middle of COVID and post-COVID, to see what migration patterns look like with a combination of being a much more competitive market at a living wage level, so below $20 or $22 an hour. Everybody's reporting much higher turnover. That has kind of flowed into really the demand for both data as well as making extremely strategic decisions around compensation. Now, as a service organization, we also probably like to see that a little bit in as much that we're not building and selling widgets. So our expenses are people. We want to ensure that we know what we're spending, why we're spending, and how much we're spending in order to get and keep qualified staff. And so as a service organization, certainly pay and benefits are always a significant portion of both general fund and in some instances utility fund or enterprise fund expenditures as a municipal government. So we like to be very informed, very intentional about applying data to any discussion around, well, are we doing what we wish to do, or are we doing what we need to do in order to recruit and in order to retain? So really all with the goal of making informed decisions, but then also matching up with a policy statement, a philosophy, a strategy around being able to attract as well as retain staff. I do have some screenshots that I wanted to share just so that you knew what kind of goes behind the scenes when we do the work. We surveyed as many jobs as possible, looking through job descriptions, budget documents, organization charts, salary plans, and comparing based on actual job duties to determine how our pay ranges look for all of our jobs. And so, one thing when you do a survey like this is that the outcome, while globally the intent matches up consistently for all positions, the outcome can vary depending on how well we're doing or not doing for each job. And so we try to look at as many jobs as possible. I'll belabor just this one slide, and then you can see some other examples. This is an example of a position where if you look across the top, we have a job title of accounting specialist. Almost all of the survey agencies had a like position that matched up pretty well based on job duties, based on minimum qualifications. We're displaying the entire salary range from minimum to maximum or from entry to top out for your job up top, and then for the like jobs out in those survey agencies. When we calculate how we're looking compared to market, we've done a couple of things. We've looked at the 66th percentile now to determine, hey, are we falling behind if we want to be just a little bit better than average, a little bit better than 50th percentile. On the bottom, you'll see a couple of extra lines. We have insight into the private sector to ensure that, where there is portability for maybe labor and trades, office and clerical, professional and technical positions, we're not looking just at other public employers, but we've incorporated private sector as well into the data. And the punchline is down at the bottom. We're a little bit low at the entry of our pay range. We look pretty good at the top out of our salary range. Now, we want to take this information and answer the first question, how are we doing? So for this job, at the middle of the range, we're a little bit low. At the top of the range, we're pretty good. But we also want to take this information for the now what, right? How do we use the information gathered to then recommend a pay range to position ourselves intentionally, right? To be where we want to be job by job up against our survey cities. So we've done this for multiple positions across all of the job families. Outside of local government, I think a lot of people struggle to appreciate both the timeliness of service expectation, the certification, in a lot of instances, the compliance, the reporting, that almost all of your departments and all of your jobs have to abide by. And so each position has its own job description. There are specific knowledge and skills required for those positions. There are minimum qualifications with respect to education, experience, knowledge, skills, additional training that may be required. And so we take all of those things into account when we try to compare jobs from agency to agency, fully with the disclaimer to say that there's probably no such thing as a perfect match. Some of the agencies that we've compared you to are a little bit smaller. Some are a little bit bigger. Certainly those smaller agencies, the employees wear a lot of hats. The employees perform much broader job duties, maybe additional job duties that may or may not add to the complexity. But I want to make sure that I'm cautious when I make the comparisons, particularly at a size sensitive level, that I'm comparing apples to apples. So meaning, am I managing a staff of 3? Am I managing a staff of 13? Do I have a large budget, a small budget? All of those things come into play when we make our market comparisons. My next example on the screen, deputy court clerk, a very front-facing position that has customer service and accounting skills involved. Almost, and the exception here is Keller, because they are joint with, I think, their neighboring city that provides the court services. All of the agencies have a municipal court function. When we compare up those job duties, this is an example where we're starting to fall behind market. And so the punchline changes job by job. The movement that comes out of our market analysis and job comparisons is really a job by job discussion to realign at a consistent level. So another example where we have both public sector and private sector data. I believe after I made this slide, we did get some data from Acton Mudd, but this is an example of a heavy equipment operator. In my travels, certainly in the last 6 to 12 months, lots and lots of competition for blue collar, for skilled trades, for labor, a higher amount of turnover than I think I've ever seen in the 20 years of doing this in your neighborhood, where suddenly these agencies are starting to recruit from one another. They're starting to put flyers and postcards in the mail to say, ooh, we noticed that you're an equipment operator in Granbury. Come to work for us in Mansfield or in Benbrook or whatever. They're getting more aggressive because we have very much a supply issue when it comes to finding and getting staff at these skilled positions. They require a commercial driver's license. They may or may not be operating where they require a utility certification of some kind, and they're getting a lot harder to find. And so not to say that I'm surprised or unsurprised as far as your overall market position, but I think another disclaimer perhaps is the data doesn't always make sense either. We're doing this in McKinney right now. They look fine on paper and they have 30% vacancy, right? So there's something going on in the market right now where it is very difficult to get and keep. That isn't just unique to field personnel, but we're starting to see it especially manifest in personnel and in out in the field. So those skilled trade positions are getting harder to fill. One last example here, police officer. We're almost always sensitive to both entry and to top out for our benchmark jobs. And in this example, we're a little bit low at entry, but we're really good at top out. And so that's good, where, certainly the top out is very important. Your range width is pretty wide. So when I post this vacancy, if we, for example, advertise that we were starting at 56K, I think you might struggle to get people. This is a very price sensitive, salary sensitive position because there are so few people going into the police profession that I want to see you be competitive throughout your pay range. The top out is very attractive. I want to get people into my plan and then move through towards the top out of the plan. I'll pause there for a moment. Everybody good if I keep going?
Yes, we're all good. Thank you.
All right, good deal. I have just a couple more slides. At a high level, as I mentioned, we're going to answer 2 questions when we do a survey. So this is the answer to the first one. On the civilian side, about 75% of our pay ranges have fallen more than 5% below market. So if I define competitive as plus or minus 5%, under the umbrella of being at the 66th percentile, I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but about 3/4 of our sample size on the civilian positions are below market. So we need to see a little bit of movement to those salary ranges as well as to those salaries to realign, whether we realign at 50th, 66th, 75th. Over time, we want to try and get, to become that employer of choice. So we're on, phase 1 of this, but about 3/4 of our civilian positions were low. The entry for our police salary ranges were competitive. The top outs looked pretty good. And so we'll realize a little bit of movement, I think, in range width to get those entry starting rates, maybe for a new hire, up a little bit. But we look, pretty good at the top out. Only about 25% of the overall sample would be what I would call at or slightly ahead of market. And that ahead of market was really only about 5% of the sample, if I include just a couple of positions on civilian and then the top out for those police pay ranges. We also looked at benefits. This is an area that is always an interesting topic because the public sector, traditionally the perception is that you all offer very competitive and very like benefits. The variables tend to be in pension contributions and enhancements to pension contributions, and then dependent health insurance coverage. I tend to take a fairly conservative approach to this. You look like you are very competitive for all of your areas. The exception would be health insurance for dependent or family coverage. And I'm always reluctant because that sand has shifted probably 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years, where cost sharing has come and gone, who is paying for spouse or dependent health insurance. That can become very, very important, I think, when employees start to appreciate the overall benefits versus an out-of-pocket expense to maybe insure my children or something like that. There are a handful of agencies that, in addition to paying 100% of employee coverage, are paying upwards of $1,000 or more for family coverage in addition to that employee amount. So suddenly my monthly contribution, if I'm the city, for an employee independence is $1,400 to $1,600. It's easy math, but it's very difficult to sustain. And so there's a balance there, I think, between what your workforce appreciates, and that might come with a disclaimer around depending on how old they are or how young they are. The light bulb comes on for a lot of us, I think, with benefits somewhere probably in our 40s. Where we need the health insurance. We start to think about retirement savings. Those things really start to matter and ramp up in the psyche, of kind of those maybe 15 to 25-year employees. But I also want to be competitive and sustainable for wages, and really competitive wages for my entry-level staff and maybe for my younger workforce. If I can get them, then we'll work on how do we keep them. So I don't have a recommendation specific to benefits. I have a finding. And that finding is you are a little bit behind for family health insurance coverage, but I am a little bit reluctant because when we do these surveys, we've yet maybe to ask these other cities what they offer that they wish they didn't offer or offered a little bit less than as far as a cost and a sustainability, because we have seen that family coverage ebb and flow out in the market in terms of practices. So just something to kind of keep on the radar as we really kind of zero in on our overall strategy and maybe that 3 to 5 year curve of becoming an employer of choice. We may end up circling back on that topic depending on what the economy does for us, certainly depending on what our strategic moves here on pay allow us to do for recruitment and for retention. We have designed an updated set of salary ranges. It looks a little bit overwhelming, but the idea is to create a table that allows us to place jobs according to market rather than coming back with this global, hey, give everybody X percent. I want to reserve that for merit, for general increase, for, kind of the across the board mindset. This table allows jobs to move when the market moves, but that's much more of a job by job proposition than it is a global, hey, we're going to move our whole pay plan by large sweeping percentages. And so the future of this, with us or with any other vendor, this table allows for jobs to move when the market moves them, rather than the entire table moving at the same pace. So supply and demand is really going to dictate how jobs move. The other notable distinction on a table like this is having consistent distance between each salary range so that we can create and maintain career ladders and opportunities to promote employees from entry to journey to senior to leadership positions, all within a finance family or a public works maintenance series. So having really meaningful separation, maybe 10% or 15% between pay ranges that I'm able to promote through, my salary is going to move left to right based on merit, based on cost of living, maybe based on across the board. My job might move based on market, or if I promote and I move to a different job in a different salary range. So the table that sits behind the scale is designed for the ultimate in flexibility, but the goal is also to move people through this scale. I want to get people to the middle of this scale, really matching up with maybe 5 to 7 years. So as they reach journey level, they're fully experienced and they're highly performing. I want to try and move people to the middle of this scale so that I have room for new hires, but I'm also inching my way closer to market for the average pay for that journey level, good performer. So the implementation includes moving people into a strategic position within their pay range based on time and job. And so we've taken the payroll information, we have aligned and created basically, a mathematical trap, if you will, to say, show me my long tenured good performers that are not at least at the middle of the scale, right? Get them into the scale, get them closer to midpoint. We have an estimated 9-month cost to achieve the 66th percentile at 1.7 million. That includes both pay and the associated benefits that increase when we increase salaries. I will pause there, but I will also defer to staff if there are questions around both budget and funding. That is across all funds, and so we can break that out, as needed between general fund and enterprise fund or utility fund, I believe. But the goal would be to go live with this here in the coming weeks. Align our structure and our actual salaries at that 66th percentile, and continue to be really educated about whatever the market does for us or to us over these next 12 months as we look at the next budget cycle. But any questions, anything that you want me to spend more time on the slides, definitely please let me know.
Questions, anyone? Just push your mic so you can hear.
So, Matt, when you say 66 percentile, that's not taking like our current, let's say just our current salary on our minimum point and then doing a 66% raise on that. That's not how it works, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So if we go back to some of our survey examples, maybe the best way to illustrate this would be if, for example, I believe that I have, this data sorted by the top of the pay range. And so for our heavy equipment operator example, across the top, you'll see our top out is at 51,960. If everybody sees that on the upper right-hand corner.
Right.
In this array, we are right in between Little Elm and Midlothian at the top. And that probably is closer to maybe the 35th or 40th percentile currently. So the 50th percentile would probably put us pretty close to in between Burleson and Salina. The 66th, we're going to start to move up, right? So we start to see and realize maybe getting ahead of Prosper in this example, whereas the 75th might put us ahead of Mansfield, right? So 75th by, if we cut this into 12ths, basically, 75th, I want to be in the top 4. And, if I want to be in the 50th, I want to be at least in the top 6 to 7. And we're going to kind of split that difference. So specifically, it's, there's adjustments for some ranges that are greater than others. So in this example, we need to move the top of our range, just the way I have it sorted, from, just above Midlothian to probably just above Salina or somewhere close to Prosper.
Okay. So did you assign the salary ranges for these different job positions, or was that done with staff as well?
No, staff was pretty hands-off. We had modeled everything with a market mindset, but not to destroy what I would call internal logic and internal equity. So, you will notice some sensitivities in the placements where perhaps not every supervisor is in the same range, or not every manager is in the same range. It's manager of what, or supervisor of whom, that starts to flow into how we value positions. The market tends to follow the bodies. So large departments with large spans of control tend to survey out a little bit higher than smaller departments with either smaller spans of control. And right behind that might be if I'm a manager of other professional degree positions, or if I'm a manager or supervisor of paraprofessional support positions. So those tend to flesh out a little bit differently. But we had, pretty much, full reign. We're not going to use near this number of pay ranges. And so if we need to clarify, even for the adopting ordinance, like, look, we don't have any job in 46 through 50 or anything like that. But we have placed all positions onto the scale. And staff was pretty hands off with that.
Okay. So no input from the staff. Is that what you're saying?
No, there was definitely reality check input on the staff, because I think that, there are some very specific positions where you were very low, especially for directors. And I'm very sensitive to that, because there is, to me, a city manager prerogative around how you wish to have an executive leadership team, and whether or not it makes sense internally for alignment to say whether or not, and I'm saying this, not your city manager, is a director. The market separates them out a little bit. So as we've modeled them, we separate them out a little bit. But then certainly I definitely want your leadership's input on that. But that was a very small objective audience, I would say.
Because on some director positions, from this new study that you did, you pretty much put all the directors in a certain salary range.
There's about 2 tiers, I believe, of directors, if I recall.
And what I see is with one director, let's, for example, on your is this attachment in his brief?
No.
Okay.
He's
So-
seen it. He has seen it. And we did, Chris and I discussed and made the call to recommend we just create one director pay range. And so the directors, you're right, were all moved into the one pay range, and we just asked that Matt make those changes in the overall plan. That was a recommendation from management.
Okay, because some of those directors are getting a significant pay jump based on this new one, where some of them are not getting as a significant increase as other ones would be. When I'm looking at it, it's almost, I just don't want to say it, but it's a pretty significant increase. Let's just put it that way.
Go ahead and tell them the logic.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
ones
there were several positions that were significantly behind market, very significantly behind market. I believe 2 directors in particular, are pretty low. So there's significant, adjustments there to realign to market, and that also matches up with our internal definition of how we wish to treat our director level positions.
And 2 that you may have noticed that were really low that we are trying to correct were the Director of Aviation and the Director of Building Services. Those needed to be corrected, and that was part of this overall attempt in those bringing them up to pay parity.
So on this one, Michael, there's not any of these directors that are under other directors, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so a director is going to be pretty much, as far as pay-wise, all the directors are going to get pretty much the same pay.
Except for time and position, yes, sir.
Okay.
So the time and position varies a lot on this scale. So like the police chief has been the police chief longer than any other department head that I'm aware of. And so, you know, his is going to be weighted more of an increase towards the center, and in his situation, past the center, because he's one of the outliers in the whole bell curve as far as tenure in job position. So in order to bring equity and not have compression with the other people that report to him, it makes sense to spread that out.
I guess let me clarify that, Chris. So that this, based on the salary range here, that's what I'm looking at.
Right.
So all the directors are going to be the same salary range.
They're going to be in category 39.
Category 39.
Right.
Now, yeah, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
And then within that, we make those decisions of where they land in those ranges.
Some will
Okay.
be at the beginning and some will be slightly either at or above the mid-range.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and really what we've got set up for most folks, if they've been there 5 years or more in that position, to try to hit 98% of that mid-range. That was the goal, the stated goal from our consultant. And so if they haven't served in that capacity that long, obviously they would be on the more of the entry level.
I'm just thinking
there
of
were-
somebody that's been a director for 1 year, and then all of a sudden they get this new pay scale, and all of a sudden their pay has doubled, almost doubled.
Yeah, we don't have that anywhere.
Okay.
No, sir.
But do you see that
Right.
with some of these positions
The
that
potential could, yes.
the potential could be there, that he could have been a director at a minimum pay scale at 39, and then with this new pay scale, he can jump up to almost double his salary based on this new pay scale. I'm just wondering if there's any of those positions, and he's already answered that there's no position like that here.
No, I think a couple of the highest were 25, 30% at the most of a correction to get them at the beginning of this new pay scale
Okay.
from where.
I feel more comfortable with that than looking at a 78% pay
Oh, yeah.
jump, which is what I'm calculating if you go from a minimum director's position at some of these, and then moving them to our new pay scale.
No,
That's a 78% jump.
There were none
Okay.
like that at all.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Michael.
You bet.
Mayor. Just to clarify, one of the things that was previously discussed was the discrepancies between some of the lower, I don't know what the right, like some of the more entry-level positions. There were a few that you said there was going to be a pretty significant jump on some of those entry-level positions versus like some of the director positions that were just talked about. What, just for clarity, I don't remember what was discussed as far as what is the potential largest jump. I think there was only one or two that were pretty high that I remember offhand, but they were on the lower end of the pay scale, not like a director's position like it was just discussed. But do you remember what some of those numbers were?
Matt, you want to take that, or you want me to?
Yeah, if you're looking at the placements, for example, on page 2, the parks laborers, you had some positions that were pretty low. Yeah, there's definitely some movement there in parks labor. Really same with our equipment operator series. They were pretty low, and I think the greatest, frankly, realignment that was needed was in the treatment plant, and to an extent, out in utility line maintenance.
Okay.
So a great majority, right, sort of, are at that kind of entry to journey level of core service level certified positions that are I'll call it sub $20 an hour, right? Just as an example, but historically they were sub $15 an hour, right? So,
Right.
trying to realign, to a point. But there's definitely some moves there, especially in the treatment plant, I think.
Okay. I think it was the grounds employee that stuck out, but yeah, I remember us discussing the utility workers and the heavy equipment operators in the plant. Some of those
Yeah,
licensed
by
positions.
percentage, those moved a fair amount.
Okay.
You had some positions that were starting, like your utility equipment operator, I think was starting at maybe 14 an hour, 15 an hour, and those definitely needed to come up.
Okay, thank you.
And Greg, when I'm looking at these from current to our new salary, there, what he just mentioned, like one of the salaries from the treatment plant, it's like over an 80%.
Right.
80% jump on some of those salaries.
How many we have that were like that?
And the parks labor, that looks like it's an 80% jump as well for some of those salaries.
But the actual salaries, position by position, are more in that, especially where those dramatic corrections were needed, they're still more in that 25 to 30% raise just to get them.
Yeah, the average is right around 19, I think, Michael.
Yeah.
19%.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. So that 80 percentile is the percentile that we've talked about, right? And so can you give us a little rationale on, I mean, we're talking about 66%, and on that third page of the attachment, those are all in the 80th percentile. Can you
Just
give us?
just the electric. Yeah.
Okay, can you give us a little, background on the methodology or the reasons why that, that group, you guys went all the way, or recommendation was to 80th percentile versus the 66 overall?
Yeah, I think, just the electric, and I'll let the city manager jump in here. I believe you had multiple people that were at $50 an hour that left for a pay increase. So that could be completely removed, I think, from the placements, because it does tend to be a little bit disruptive when you look at, I guess, what I would call internal equity. But that market is so unique. But yeah, the 80th is just for those 5 positions there in electric that are on page 3.
Okay, that helps. So it doesn't include all the other positions that are down below that with treatment
Correct.
plant? Okay, so
Yeah, correct.
it's that block right in there. And obviously, I am aware of the challenges that we've had in our electric department with, linemen, and, we approved a third party to kind of help Kenneth Causey and that department out, so, okay.
Yeah,
that
everything's
helps.
66 except electric. I can see why that's confusing now. I
Okay,
could move
I'm
it
just
down.
curious. Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions, or you want Matt to go ahead? Matt, I think you can go ahead. Continue.
I think he's wrapped up. Were you finished, Matt?
Yes, sir.
We'll keep him online in case y'all have some other questions, but earlier today, Ava and I were working on some details, and with these adjustments, it gets us to the lower or the entry-level position with the city is around $14.92 or 3 cents per hour, and if we adopt this tonight, we're just going to make it $15 as the kind of an entry-level starting pay for someone to come to work for the city in the positions that were at like $11 and $12, and so it's a good step in the right way, I think, for the community to have that as a entry level, and it's really hard to keep people at $14.69 an hour that's working in different capacities for us. So some of those were listed in the equipment operated categories and what have you. So those are going to go up. So anyway, just let you know that how that all fleshed out was $14.93, and I looked today, well, we should just round it up to 15, and then we don't have to remember the decimal, so.
And we just do that within the range, the existing range. We're not going to move those starting and, the range itself at all. We would just say, okay, rather than the very minimum, as Chris said, we would just move that and start them at that hourly rate, that $15. And that all, we've been doing the position by position by position, and we're within the budget that we're still, same number we've been asking for.
And what this also does, it allows us to clear up this ad hoc process that we're going through every time we need to hire people. We're having to figure out how to get them, competitively from another city or whatever, and recruit them, and it doesn't necessarily fit our strategy. We're having to operate outside of our existing minimum, midpoint, and maximum in some cases to attract the workers. So we're just trying to address the whole scheme. Like I mentioned, I need to be able to advertise on our Public Works Director the salary range that we're going to be paying, and as I mentioned, we didn't have a big crop of interest in the previous announcement, and so we've hired a consultant, the same company that searched for your city manager sitting here tonight, to help us do a search for a Public Works Director. So it's important that we get the salary advertised to attract the right person.
And the other 24 vacancies, 25 vacancies that we currently have as well, just waiting to push those out.
There's actually a sheet in your folder that shows some pretty pertinent information. The mayor had asked me these two questions, and I wanted to provide them to you. On average, how many budgeted staff openings did the city have throughout the last budget cycle? Number two, how much of the total dollar amount of 2021-22 end of year positive variance to the budget was from budgeted but unspent wages and benefits? I call that lag in the salaries. And so you kind of got that, but the last paragraph, we've got 39 employees that left last year and currently have 25 vacancies that we need to fill. So that's a pretty substantial vacancy rate and turnover, and it's hard to replace these people, and that's what got us to where we're at, is we need to address the salaries and compensation plans for everyone.
And Chris, where can they find these open positions?
On granbury.org and on our website where it says find a job.
It's just a little plug in there.
That's right.
Right.
Got a great website by our great communication team. Or they can just call me. I'm all ears.
A couple more questions for either you or Michael. How are you gonna address new positions that are being, let's say you want to formulate a new position? How is that going to be handled?
Well, what we'll have to do is compare to the existing scales that we have of the internal equity. That's a major component anytime you're integrating a new position, or you look at what's internally equitable and externally competitive. So we would need to add that in as we go along, and then every year we make those budget or those changes to that. We would present this pay scale in your budget moving forward.
Okay.
Basically a job analysis that we'll do with each new position that comes along, and we'll look at the work Matt's done, and if necessary, we'll have we've done this at other cities where you have an on-call. You go, hey, we've got this new position. Tell me where you think it falls based on your market cities. When you've looked at this many cities, that's the kind of work. I don't want to speak for MAC, but they can do that pretty quickly usually from a job analysis perspective to make sure, depending on the position, if it doesn't obviously fall in a range, we can get assistance if we needed to.
And it depends on the job description. If it's let's pick on Lance. He's our newest created position, and how did we determine what to pay him? Well, it was number one. I had to find out what the market rate was for people in that profession, and then I had to negotiate with him to get him here. And so you take all that in consideration of what you had to go through to number one, get them here, and then work them, and then the next challenge is to keep them. And that's the same way it is for these gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen in the room tonight, is, you know, they've got skills that are marketable, and we want to make sure we keep them.
Okay. The next question is, average percentage was 20%, is that what y'all said? The average increase was about?
Is that what you said, Matt? Was the average 20%?
Yes, sir. Yeah, right around 19%, I believe.
So, and that's pretty much across the board, is that right, Matt?
No. I think to get to that average, you've got positions that were fine where they were. You've got positions that need, a little bit more than that, a little bit less than that.
So the lowest percentage of raise, what was it?
6%.
6%. And the highest?
So the cap was just short of the middle of the pay range. So that kind of mid-range goal always stopped just short of that.
98%.
Really for cost savings. I don't have the percentage in front of me, but
98.
there were a handful at 30%.
Okay. I mean, that's still a good, even at 6%, that's more than what we did for cost of living last year.
But we did a total of 8% last year.
8%.
But let me add this, and I'm operating from the fly unscripted here. Michael was able to find a previous study done by Waters Consulting back in 2013. They made recommendations similar to this that weren't adopted, so we're even that much further behind, and this is what we're at today. So I think it's important for y'all to understand and comprehend what we've gone through getting to this, to research that we're on the right track, because this is a big decision, and this is something that we need to keep sustainable, and that's why we trimmed this back to 66th percentile instead of the 75th. We're comfortable with what we're presenting to you, but more than anything is we've been behind for over a decade, behind, and we've been, paddling with one paddle up the creek to keep employees here. So the ones that are here, we can't thank you enough for your loyalty and staying with us and what we've been through together.
And my last question, Chris, or Michael, is this is going to be implemented when, and does this include cost of living allowance? Are we going to see the cost of living allowance next year?
We will budget moving forward some kind of pay adjustment every year,
okay,
to keep up with inflation and whatever else we can. If we have some merit pay available, we'll budget that as well. But definitely we want to do a cost of living adjustment annually, just like any other company or corporation would if they can afford it.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Burwell.
Mayor, before I ask my questions, because I actually do have several of them, I wasn't sure that Matt was completely done. I was just going to wait till the end, so I'll go ahead and start. But I do want to thank Chris and Michael for bringing this to our attention. I know that we want to be competitive. I understand that. And Mr. Weatherly for conducting the study. The questions that I ask are not any that have been asked up here, and I want everybody to understand I cannot speak for the entire council. I don't want anybody to get the impression that I don't want to give anybody a raise. That could be further from the truth. I feel like it's incumbent upon us to ask some harder questions and just make sure that what we're doing is the right thing to do and the way we go about it is the right way to do it. And what I definitely want to do is personally make sure that the way we go about it is done in a manner that rewards our employees for their service, not based on a job title, but for the value they bring to the table for the city of Granbury. So just bear with me. I'm going to ask a few questions. I have several of them, but I will try to make them short. The first
That's
one.
what we're here for. You just ask away.
It was
We're
one
good.
agenda item. I figure we have some time. So most of these may be questions for Matt directly. In the agenda description, we chose 12 benchmark cities based on the following criteria: geographic proximity, similar population growth patterns, number of employees, approximate budget values. What was done to compare the job description at the job description level? Did we take these cities that we compared side by side wastewater or water treatment plant to water treatment plant and decide that these duties are identical, and that's what we're basing that pay on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we go for about an 80 to 120% overlap on job duties. The sensitivity that you just described at the plant would be the certification also matters. There are some positions that the certification doesn't matter quite as much. That's one that the cert really matters. We've had a chance to work with quite a few of these cities. If not, we wrote their job descriptions in some instances. But we compared your job descriptions to theirs, really as a guide, right? So, it's not ever 10 out of 10, I guess I would say, as far as a job match, for a myriad of reasons: staffing levels, age of infrastructure, performance levels, all of that, is a variable that we can't quite control. But job duties and certifications were compared at the job description level.
Okay. In that, I guess what I'm asking also is, we have some folks that can potentially do another job, say, and I'm going to pick a job that we don't have filled currently, which is heavy equipment operator. If we hire a heavy equipment operator that potentially could also be qualified to do light equipment operation, is that considered? Someone in my mind would be more valuable and might not be getting the correct raise in this package if they're not identified as having more than one skill set, if they're just going by the job description. Does that make sense? I want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. That was why I asked that question about job description, because we probably have some folks that go help out in other areas and don't get compensated for it. I just want to make sure that we take care of those folks as well.
And I can touch on just our past practice in those regards. We do, that does happen, and we do have a lot of times where an employee has those talents outside of their own area that they're currently working. What we've done in those instances that I think works well is like planning, for instance. We had one person in planning for a period of time doing 4 jobs, and so Public Works had a administrative assistant that they brought over to assist with community development, but there was an employee that stepped up and had to do 2 or 3 jobs pretty routinely, and what we do is pay that employee an amount of money, an hourly increase, basically, to where, for instance, if you're a planner and you're functioning as a senior planner for a period of time, we're going to pay that employee that senior planner rate while they're having to function in that seat. And what we do is let it accumulate over a period of time for the amount of time that they have to function in that role, and then pay them a lump sum payment at the end of that, so that they don't get accustomed to a new pay every check. You get this at the end, and sometimes it's gone 4 months, 6 months. We've had to do it. Sarah stepped up and helped when we didn't have any economic development assistance, and we did a similar stipend there. And we look for those opportunities to do exactly that every time they come up. We do them in PD, out of where they work out of their area. If you're a corporal, for instance, and you need to go step in as a sergeant, or if you need to step in as a lieutenant temporarily, that's exactly what we look to do, is take advantage of those talents and make sure that they're rewarded for stepping up every time.
Thank you. Do we have, this, I don't know, this might be a Chris question. Have we done any type of anonymous employee survey by a third party or even internally to determine, we continue to talk about people exiting because of salaries. Do we have a percentage on what that actually is? Do we have exit interviews that indicate that people were unhappy because of the pay, or were there other issues that came about? These either questions that we need to ask now or need to prepare to ask in the future, so we don't do this again in 3 years.
So we do exit interviews when they will do them with us. Sometimes they don't want to go to the trouble to fill it out, but in the last year, I can only think of one that left due to not receiving more pay out of the 39 turnover. I can only.
But
think
no
of one.
documentation that indicates that?
Pardon?
No documentation that
No,
indicates the truth?
but I can just tell you that this thinking about the people, when they leave, it hurts, and you know why they left. And I don't have one in mind I got one in mind, only one that left for other reason out of the 39. Can you think of them? Am I mistaken anywhere? We've got some directors here that we could ask that question as well. But
and believe me, Chris and I have had very similar discussions to what you're possibly alluding to, is that we want to make sure that they're not leaving for a bad management reason or,
Right.
or culture.
bullying.
Culture,
right.
Or bullying within a department or anything like that. And so-
Personalities. We want to make sure that we're creating the right environment for people to stay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not honing in on one issue when there might be other issues that we're not addressing.
No, ma'am.
Absolutely. We're keenly aware of those cultural issues. We want to make sure.
I have several more questions, so if anybody else has a question,
Sure,
just
that's
break
what-
in. I'm looking at the rest of them. Okay, so let me look at my list here. There was one, and we kind of addressed this. We pass capital improvement projects all the time. Capital improvement projects don't necessarily affect our credit rating. Is something like this, taking out a $1.7 million package, going to affect our credit rating? Maybe that's an Ava question, I don't know.
Ava's welcome to answer as our chief financial officer, but the overall credit worthiness of the city is rated on our bill paying ability, and we're not damaging that one bit. So, we probably talked to Dransfield and our financial advisors in the past about our fund balance, and we're well within balance of where we need to keep our fund balances. So,
Okay.
I don't see any negative impact, and they certainly haven't advised us of any negative impact on this. So,
They being?
but financial advisor
Okay.
John with Hilltop.
Next question. We, once a year, have a catastrophic event of some kind, whether it be fires, tornadoes, freeze. Last year it was the utility issue when we lost our power and our rates went astronomically high. And we ended up taking out a $4 million package of bonds to try to pay that off. I understand that it appears that we have money to fund this. What does this do financially if we get into another position where we have to have that extra that we have in the bank, basically?
Good question, and that is the purpose of the 25% ordinance on both the general fund unrestricted reserve and the utility fund unrestricted reserve, is to make sure those are always there for those events that you're describing. We're fortunate in a position right now with good sales tax collection years and to be able to bring this to council comfortably is where Chris, I think, sits at this point. And I know, talking with us, that's what we're hearing and feeling as well. That's the reason that ordinance was passed by most councils in most cities, is to make sure that's untouchable. That's always has to be there to make sure that we can respond to those events, those emergency events, whatever they may be.
And it still keeps us in a good position, even with that dip in and our keeping that reserve, to be able to take out bonds in an emergency situation if we have to.
I would say absolutely, yes.
Okay. This one-time adjustment this year, if we do this, and Matt, this is probably, I have a lot of back-end questions, I think, on the research side. What precedent has this set for other cities as far as expectations by city employees? Have you gone back and done a regroup and asked questions of how the employees felt about it, what they expected in the future years?
Yeah, I mean, each city, every year it's dialing for dollars in June to decide what everybody's going to do in October. These particular survey cities kind of create their own prevailing rate index, and so wages and CPI are never one for one. right? I mean, there were years where everybody's getting 3% and CPI was flat. There were years where CPI was 8 or 9%, and only a few agencies did 8 or 9%. But the maintenance of this really looks like an expressed desire to stay a little bit above average of these survey agencies. And so, we kind of have the answers to the test other than the cost, right? And that is going to vary year over year. The last 3 to 5 years, were an average of 3.5%. And this past year was more like 4.7% to almost 5%. So we see these kind of blips, every so often. But if there's a commitment there to get into maintenance mode, then we at least gauge each city's intent on an annual basis to budget for salary adjustments. And it's typically a combination of something plus something. So a cost of living plus a merit, or a general increase plus a step increase, or whatever that might be. And so, we'll be in position to help staff with gauging the ongoing position if the stated philosophy, or if you were to take on language that said it is the city of Granbury's intent or adopted ordinance, to position ourselves at the 66th percentile of these agencies, that flows into, or at least provide staff the direction to, keep that status going.
That was one of my questions also, was sustainability. I want to make sure that we can sustain this in the future. I know we do a lot of projections based on sales tax, like you mentioned, Matt, and development, incoming property taxes, things like that. We're in the middle of a moratorium, which currently looks positive, but, we still have a ways to go before we can let that go. So I just want to be sure that we are planning for the future, and not necessarily just this package itself, but future packages. I assure you, at some point, we're going to have to come back around to this all over again, because we're going to fall behind. Everybody does. Everybody goes through cycles where they're not meeting employee expectations, or they're not matching what other companies are doing. It's just kind of a fact of life. So sustainability is really a big issue with me. I want to make sure that we can continue to grant raises. I don't want to get to a point next year where we can't even do a cost of living raise because we've done such a tremendous package this year,
We agree.
Okay, this is kind of I don't know if you guys can answer this or not. Matt, this is probably another question for you. The retention rate, I know that this is really about recruitment and retention. And do you know what the retention rate has been for cities that have implemented this type of plan? I don't know where to look.
No, and unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good news there either. I think that Salina, Prosper, Melissa, Anna have all moved to $20 an hour, and it has not helped. Last I saw, a living wage in Hood County was just under $17 an hour for a single individual, and about $26, almost $27 an hour for a family of 3 or 4. So I think that has dominated the conversation every bit as much as the other end, and I kind of mentioned it during the PowerPoint. There's very much a supply issue. When agencies are literally moving from away from federal and state minimum wage at 7.25, and their own minimum of about $12 an hour to $20, and that has not helped. I just don't have good news there. You can go drive for Coca-Cola for $24 an hour, or you can go work at Buc-ee's with air conditioning and benefits and day shift for $21 an hour, and I don't have to stand in the ditch or the median or the sewage or those types of things. That's the real part of it, right? And so I don't mean to not answer your question, but I don't know. Both recruitment and retention right now at all levels, for all employers, public and private, I feel like that has to curb at some point. We're seeing it in IT sectors where hiring has slowed down, but there's still a big migration on of people changing careers, and people making moves for flexibility, for work at home, for not being able to offset the cost of childcare. Just a really weird time coming out of COVID because, everything was healthy. Now, when the economy's healthy, I feel like the public sector struggles to get and keep people. And then the perception of stability, when the economy suffers, people come scrambling back. And I'm not advocating for one or either of those extremes, I don't think. Other than to keep a really close eye, I think, on obviously everything that you mentioned, right? Your sales tax revenue, your ability to sustain, which is right where I believe your city manager is at as well. But having, intentional data pour into hiring, to placement, to being competitive, to knowing where you are, right? It's all of those things, and it's not going to be probably one problem equals one solution. It could be 3 to 5 solutions for one problem, and then 3 more problems and 10 solutions, or that kind of thing. So I don't think it fixes everything, at least to hear the Salinas and the Annas and the Melissas to talk. But I hope this is a start for sure.
So I guess my concern with that conversation, that statement, is we're looking at doing an across the board, from top to bottom raise, when maybe we should really be focusing on those lower paid, lower end jobs. And I'm just throwing this out there because these are the ones that don't stay. And I don't know what that looks like. This is your expertise. I don't know how it's across the board. Like you said, I've been in the healthcare industry for years, and there's a certain pay range where you lose people regularly. The turnover rate is extremely high. Service industry, we've got people here who own restaurants that can't keep employees because the pay rate is low. And those are the people that we really need. Those are the people that are in the trenches, literally and figuratively. So I guess it concerns me, without that research that we were just talking about, doing something like this when we don't know that it's going to solve the problem that we're actually trying to solve, which is keeping people and recruiting people.
We think it's one.
Yeah, I think we're going for something consistent for all jobs, right? So there's a market for every position, whether I commute into the Dallas Metroplex or not, at the professional level. It's certainly different, I guess, than being smack dab in the middle of, pick a corridor, right? Because there's 55 cities or so within a couple of hours. But I like to see consistency as a result of this. And so all positions will now have a similar relationship to market, rather than historically, and this was not intent. The outcome was we have some positions at 80% of market, we have positions at 72% of market, we have positions at 90% of market. We're all over the place, right? And so trying to be really consistent for all positions, because even the next agreed vacancy is not easy to fill either. So just trying to be consistent, I think.
And we think the pay is, probably like you, is just one part of the solution. We also have to continue to adapt, and this is another thing we've been talking a lot about, to the new generations of workers, that a lot of us are still in the traditional thinking mode, and so we're going to have to do more new types of things to attract millennials and Gen Z and X and all the rest of them that are coming up behind us, because we are used to just, in the past, dealing with mostly the same kind of thinkers, and that's those traditionalists. But we're coming to terms, some recent training we've been to, more and more, that we're going to have to change the way we think to make people want to be here culture-wise, not only pay-wise. But that's a big part of what we're planning and working on now through the HR arena that Chris has asked us to do.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I just want to make sure that we're focusing on the right set of people when we do that. Right. Because, we can talk all we want about millennials, but we can't virtually fix a trench.
Right.
That incentive has to be, in my mind, has to be different. And I guess it concerns me because we've got a lot of people that have been around for a very long time, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't be compensated for it. Like I said, I want them to be compensated for the job that they do and the value that they bring to the city. That's a must. But I also want to make sure that the folks that are leaving on a regular basis, which it seems like there's a small fraction of those people in a very specific pay range, maybe that's where we should focus
Right.
instead of an across-the-board approach. And the 1.7 just concerns me. I mean, like I've mentioned, I think we're setting a precedent there that I don't know we can continue. We don't know what next year is going to look like. Again, projections. And I think there are some folks that we need to focus on first before we do the across. And that's my own personal opinion. Everybody else may feel differently. That's where I am.
Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Mr. Wadley?
Okay, I'm just first thinking along the lines of what Trish was just saying. But if we said, okay, these jobs we really need to do something about, because I really kind of like this concept of the chart, the job positions and everything. If we did something like that, wouldn't that just continue making the whole plan not equitable?
Yeah,
I mean, that's why we're doing that. That's why we're looking at this, is to try to make all the jobs in line and everybody paid appropriately for their job. And so if we said we're just going to concentrate on these few jobs, and I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but wouldn't that down the road just mess this up even further? Part of why we have the problem we have right now. Am I looking at that the correct way?
We believe that a wholesale cure is the best approach, with complete respect for what Mayor Pro Tem is saying. We've had these exact conversations and all the scenarios, and when we talked with Matt originally when we were kicking this off, we just feel that you start getting, you get more out of sync if we don't do this wholesale correction, kind of a course correction, and where we've been for decades, get this course correction done, and then start applying it properly, keep working on our culture, keep working on the changes that we need to make to attract and to keep good employees. That we stand behind the recommendation, but that I understand all sides.
Okay. And when Eddie a minute ago mentioned the cost of living adjustment each year, and we said, of course, we'd look at that. So this 3-page compensation plan, the entire plan would be adjusted based on cost of living. Is that correct? Is that how the COLA adjustment would happen? You would take that, every number on there would adjust by 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever the COLA is. Is that correct?
Go ahead. Matt's nodding, but no. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and I don't get a vote, but my vote would be no. The 3, 4, 5% would apply to the salaries in that scale, but not to the whole scale. And so it is appropriate to adjust the table. I would say adjust the table 1.5% to 2% when needed. That's more of a sensitivity for the starting rate. If you wish to give 3, 4, 5%, do it for the salaries on those ranges rather than the entire chart, right? Because jobs are moving individually. In that 3, 4, 5%, if you applied it to the whole scale, you might overdo it for one job and dramatically underdo it for the other. Whereas we're really trying to send a message to the employees specifically that we wish to value in 3, 4, 5% but let the market take care of where the jobs fall, if that makes sense.
Okay. And how many total employees do we have?
Roughly 200 full-time.
So 38 is a significant number out of 200.
Really,
okay.
we've got 180 folks with health benefits. So that's really the full-time, fully engaged employees. The rest are part-time and part-time equivalents. So you add them all together, 2 part-time equal a whole. That's where he gets his number. So, yeah.
There are about 80 employees below $20 an hour, and I think there's about 55 employees below 17. I mentioned 17 because that's the Hood County living wage. Those individuals, like the parks laborers, the average increase is 22 to 26%. So pretty significant bumps there to get them much closer to a living wage or better.
Well, that question was about if we had 38 people leave, that's 15, 20% of our employees. That's significant.
Right.
And then another thing I kind of looked at here, and this is just the number in general, the 1.7, and how big is that? It's 2.8% of our budget. And so, it's a lot of money, but it's still, Oh, here's my question about that. Every year we have a budget based on the income we think the city's going to receive. I believe that most years we receive a surplus. And is that correct? Ava would know that.
Yes.
That's correct.
So how much is a surplus in general? It can be a percentage.
Well, just in the wages on that report that was in your packet was $894,000 of surplus that was budgeted but went unspent that goes towards surplus of our budget. See what I'm saying? So the audit will come out in February, March, but I believe it's we had about $3 million surplus in the general fund.
And right now with 25 vacancies, that's each month, that's money unspent to pay people, but yeah, other people are having to pick up those workloads.
Okay, but is the surplus you're talking about extra money that we received last year that we did not anticipate receiving, or just money that we didn't spend?
Both would be about $3 million.
Okay, so do we know how much extra we received that we didn't think we were going to get? Not money we didn't spend, I understand that.
It's like 2.2 million. I'm just shooting from the hip. What do you think, Ava? I'm talking general fund, and then the enterprise fund was about $1 million.
General fund, it's really sales tax is our major revenue. Good evening, council. So we really in sales tax we only received about, like you said, about $1 million more than projected. Everything else was due to savings.
Okay, thank you.
But on the utility fund side, the surplus revenue was over $2 million.
And the 894 includes benefits as well. It's wages and benefits?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's a cool million. That's either $894,000 worth of work that didn't get done, or got done at time and a half, or we put some pressures on some people that get reflected in their home life, and pretty soon they're saying, hey, this isn't worth it. So it's not just an to me, it's not just an $894,000 not unspent amount of the budget. It goes a heck of a lot deeper than that, and actually goes to, in my opinion, it goes to those personnel matters, other matters that you talk about versus just wages. And just for my clarification, we talked about an across-the-board increase. This is not, my understanding, this is not an across-the-board increase. This is a review and analysis of our pay structure as it relates to our competitors, other cities, and as a result, our pay structure needs to be X, Y, or Z in these various job categories. And as a result of that, some of the people that are in a wage category that we've not kept up with are getting a 20%, or the proposal is something like a 20% increase in that pay category, which I was listening to Mr. Wadley here on the percentages. An $11 to a $15 or $14.93 increase is a 25. Actually, it's more than that. It's almost 30% increase for those individuals. You go from 11 to 14, and 14 is, that's the minimum wage at McDonald's, or it was. Has it gone up? It's probably gone up. That's my understanding. It's not a across-the-board wage increase.
That's correct.
It's the movement of the whole process.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Trish.
I was just going to say, when I mean across the board, I am under the impression that pretty much every employee is getting a new bracket, right? A new raise, a new
some amount. Yes, ma'am.
Everybody. That's what I mean by across
Unless
the board.
they haven't
every
been,
employee.
Unless they just started, or of course come in there's a vacancy now and they come in, they'll come in at the minimum, depending, or somewhere in wherever they fit with their qualifications. But yes, the approach was everybody moves to where they should be based on time and position, up to 98% of the mid-range based on the tenure that they have here. And if they wouldn't get anything with that, then everyone would get at least a 6% for COLA for the cost of living for inflation and everything that we're currently facing.
So just to kind of go back to what you said, Mayor, on the structure, the percentage for a $14 an hour employee may seem large, but it's also going to be a large increase for those 39s.
Correct.
I mean, it's going to be significantly more. I guess that's where.
To pay them at market.
Correct. Well, yeah, to do what this wants to do.
Correct. We wanted to fix the whole thing, not just part of it, right?
Yeah, I have a hard time with the word fix. And I think probably everybody up here knows me that I'm not a blanket policy person. And I just want to make sure, again, that we're focusing in. And I had a quick question for Chris. Can you help remind me where those 39 vacancies are currently? The majority of them.
It's on that personnel savings. So we've got finance, purchasing, IT, warehouse, permits, economic development, community development, police department, street, fleet, park, utility billing, water treatment, water distribution, water collection, public works.
And the pay ranges, basically, not specifically.
They're across. They're listed there, or that's cumulative, I guess. But you know, I think the equipment operator is a good one to pick on. That's a 30% change for somebody driving the heavy equipment. So that's doing what you're wanting done. It's affecting the working guy out on the street. So I'm pleased with that part of it. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that it's equitable.
If you increase everything, you have compression. Or if you don't increase everything, you have compression, and then you have internal inequity there. So that's the hard concept for me to understand is how do we go from $25 to $32 an hour for somebody without a bachelor's degree that's not doing management and not do the same for them? See what I'm saying? How do you do that? And I just don't see it as internally equitable to pick and choose particular pay fields or work structures of what's going on based on the way we feel. So that's what I'm doing here. If I just pick everybody that makes below $40,000 a year, let's pay them $47,000. Then I'm doing it based on the way I feel instead of the hard science of HR and the legality of doing things fair and equitable. And that's another issue that we hadn't even scratched the surface of tonight is if I don't treat someone the same as I do someone else, I'm providing inequity.
Oh, I understand
and
that.
That's not good.
I understand that. But there's also, I'm sure, as there is in everything, a potential to do things in stages. I mean, if we want to reach that equity where we've gotten everybody up to this, this program right here.
It's like I said in executive session, tell me what number you want.
Well, I can't tell you a number that I want because I don't know what that number is.
Yeah.
But there are sections of our employees in the city, I think, that are suffering a little more than others. And yes, I understand your equity issue and compression. I understand that as well. Like I said, I just want to make sure that we have all of our information before we do something like this.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And let me ask you another question. I have more. Have you guys had an opportunity to present this to the employees? And
No, we don't want to put that pressure on you as an elected official.
well, I kind of want to know what they think.
Oh,
No, we wouldn't do that. We don't share, we wouldn't share this kind of information before
So
they could.
they haven't seen the table or anything?
Oh, they've seen, the table is public information.
Right.
Yes.
But have they had an opportunity to come to you with questions and understand the
No,
process?
Departments all received the tables, yes,
The department heads
correct.
today or yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorable, not favorable?
So far, it's been on thank yous from all the departments.
I can't begin to express the appreciation that I've received from people that know we're working on this without seeing the table. I mean, they just come up and say, thank you for addressing this. And so, you know.
Well, I mean, I understand that. I would be grateful too.
But
I
as far as laying it out and saying, okay, now employees, that's like the fox in the hen house. You got to have some equity balance in here to where this is a decision this board drives, and we've hired a consultant to provide what he believes is fair and equitable for our employees, and then we implement it.
Yeah,
and I truly believe we've got a sustainable plan. We didn't hit our 75 percentile mark to be truly the desired community where people will drive here from Fort Worth back and forth. And that's what we want. We want to tap that labor pool that's within 45 minutes. There's 2 million people within 45 minutes of here, that if we could attract them to come and work here, we won't have a problem with short-handed departments. And so that was the whole impetus behind making us a desirable city for people to want to work here.
Well, I think that we are a desirable city. I mean, we have a lot of long-timers that have lived here for a long time, worked here a long time. We have a very good quality of life, so I don't think that's a
But we also have people that are struggling, and we're trying to address that. And we also have people that are professionals that can't buy a house here. You know the price of the houses are tough, and so that goes along with the whole spectrum is quality of life, culture, competitive pay.
Again, I understand the concept. I like the concept. I don't know if I like it right now. I think there are some other things that need to be addressed. But I think my biggest issue, and this goes back to my conversation with Matt, we don't have the research that proves that what we're doing is going to accomplish our goal. That's my main concern. I feel like we need more information before we make a decision like this.
Thank you. This is our recommendation, but thank you. I hear you. But we think this needs to be done, and we recommend it being done now. Would have been nice if we could have done it as last year's budget process leading up to October. Things happened that were out of our control. We tried.
I understand that.
Yeah.
There's also, I mean, we're not bound to a time frame as far as I know. I know we want to accomplish this by January 1. We've finagled other things before where we've been able to do it later in the year and do retroactively.
Right.
I really would like the information to be complete before we
Well, let's make that list of what that information is so I'll fully understand.
The information on whether this has been successful in other cities. Mm-hmm.
I don't
We need
think it's
to
known.
gauge. Huh?
I don't think it's known. You want a survey performed?
I would love a survey from the cities, the 12 cities that we grabbed to do this study, to see if it's been successful. We've compared them. We've compared our plan to 12 cities.
I think we would, in my opinion, we would recommend proceeding and performing that exercise and reporting to you as part of next year's budget process. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Before he says it, I would just like to say that not every city is working and doing this with the same motive. So
I'm not looking for motive. I'm looking for
our
facts.
motive is to retain people, and I'm not sure that is what the motive is for other cities. So
But if they're using the same plan, the data should still be basically the same, whether they've been able to, fill those positions that have been lacking.
Do you have anything you want to add, Matt?
No, other than it goes broader than these 12 cities. I don't know, with the exception of Burleson and Weatherford, I don't know when the last studies were done by these agencies, job by job. I was attempting to offer anecdotes about the state of the world, with Melissa and Anna and Prosper and Salina making the moves that they did and still struggling to get people. And it was really just in response to, the question that was posed. If it helps at all for the rest of the context, there are better than 50 people on the payroll file that are, I will say, just getting or proposed to get just the 6%. Their average pay is over $30 an hour. Compare that to what I said about the parks laborer that was getting 26%. Yes, it's a smaller dollar amount, but that they can go home with another $250 an hour is pretty significant to bring back. I think. So I get the messaging, but I do not have any information other than the anecdotes that every agency in North Texas has seen double the turnover in the last 18 months and has struggled to get and keep people. But it's not just the cities, it's the private sector as well. There's a reason when you go through the drive-through, there's signs up everywhere at $19, $20, $21 an hour. It's an arms race, unfortunately. So I don't have the capability of answering the question that was posed. I don't, unfortunately.
Mr. Corrigan, did you have a question? No. Comment? Okay. Like you needed to say something. Okay. I hear what Ms. Burwell is saying, and I understand that. And if we are to pursue the approach of saying, let's slow this down, let's reduce this, delay it, then I think we have to also assess at the same time, what is it that we will take off of city management's staff's plate? Because we're 25 people short today. We lined up our work during our budget process that we would do X, Y, and Z based upon having X number of employees with these skill sets to do this task. And yet, we hear here tonight with a very thorough analysis that says, you guys are short on the pay scale. And here is a way to adjust it, not the, not to take it to the 100% or to the 75% even, but you're far enough behind that you as a city need to seriously address getting your salaries up so that you can be competitive in the marketplace. And Trish, I appreciate that there is no empirical evidence that says, gee, we raise it to 20, we'll reduce it by X. I don't know. I'm just saying that if we're not going to do this, and I believe that the finances support this, then what is it that we take off the plate? What is it that we say that we wanted to do, will do, and it's not going to get done? Mr. Wadley?
We lost 20% of our workforce last year. And for years I've heard how we'll hire a police officer, we put them through academy, we get them trained, and then they don't even have to move. They just go work in Weatherford for, another $10,000 a year or whatever. It's worth it to drive back and forth. And I really, in the last, since our meeting 2 weeks ago, really try to wrap my mind around the number and how we'd pay for it. And that's why I asked the question about our surplus. I know that y'all have shown us how there's enough money in our fund balances to pay for it. I hated going there. And I didn't think about the surplus actually until sitting up here tonight. And I thought, if we can basically pay for it that way, because we have surplus every year. We've had, I remember my first or second year in office when we had all these sort of dreams that were never going to happen, and then Chris came in at the end of the year and said, here's how we can pay for it. And I'm like, wow, that's like pulling the rabbit out of the hat. And so, it's 3% of our budget. It's not, it's not like it's a big number, but our budget's a big number. So I really, I like the plan. I like the chart. I like trying to make everything equitable. I realize that, maybe there's some needs that are greater than others right now. And I had a hard time wrapping myself around a potential 30% increase, because that's just almost unheard of to me. And yet, if that's what makes it right, and I know, Trish, you said you had an issue with, is it the right plan, or is it, but it looks like it would work really well. And then going forward, when you hire employees, you know exactly where they go based on their job description and their responsibilities. It's where they fit in the chart, and then everybody's treated fairly and equitable that way. I'm very comfortable with it.
Further comment?
Just a couple of comments.
Yes, Mr. Bell.
Certainly agree the need to be competitive. During all my years of working, I put a lot of budgets together, did a lot of salary reviews, understand all the salary grades and ranges and so forth, and how we move employees in from an entry level. And I hired a lot of people, both people from college, and I hired a lot of people from different companies. And obviously pay is one portion of why somebody takes a job. And Chris mentioned them earlier. Has to be the right culture, the right work environment. You have to feel good about who it is that you work for, because at the end of the day, that sets the tone. So certainly a need to be competitive. It is, Bruce mentioned it, it's a daunting number, to look at and try to figure out, if spending those dollars, to Tricia's point, solves our issue around hiring and retention. I did ask Chris the other week about exit interviews. I conducted a lot of them during my career. I thought they were important. And you have to kind of ferret out whether or not, you believe the person telling you why they left is really the reason why. Sometimes they're very candid, and sometimes they're not. But and the reason, obviously, that you do that is to get a good gauge of, what are the key reasons people are not staying with the company. They either change industries, or they go to work for somebody else for whatever reason, or it is a culture issue. And you need to understand that because you still have a lot of people that work for you. And if there are changes that need to be made within the culture, you need to address them, or, the door will stay open and more people will follow. And I think the other thing that has been discussed up here tonight, it has to be sustainable. I think, as we work on the budget, which will start up this coming summer, we definitely, need to look at the budget, of how we sustain a program like this. And if there's opportunities to look at, how we budget things and where our surplus comes from. And I know, throughout the year, there's ebbs and flows and there's tweaks that happen, and we look for ways to save money. That's part of our job. And I take that very important, that if we can squeeze a nickel out of something, we ought to be doing that, because there will be a rainy day where we need it. Can I ask just one other question? I know the objective was to try to get to the 75th percentile. Is it appropriate to ask kind of what that plan might look like? Is that a stair step to go from 66 to 75? What period of time does that look like? And how we might accomplish that, and what's the financial impact of that? Thanks.
Matt, are you still there?
Yes.
So he presented that earlier. It was 2.3 million to go to the 75 percentile. And we're at 1.7 to go to the 66 percentile. My goal would be to monitor our business, and whenever we see that we can move to the next step to be the 75 percentile, then I would work towards making those recommendations to you. It would probably take another couple of years to get there financially. Depends on the growth. Mr. Perryman's all about economic forecasting for the state of Texas, and he's showing that Texas is not going to go into a bigger recession like some of the other parts of the nation, and I'm confident that we're on the right track. We have forecasting tools in our disposal through software that show that we're just going to keep doing well based on what's going on. So I don't see us coming back in the next 9 months and saying, okay, now it's time to go to the 75 percentile, or I would be doing that right now. Sustainability wise, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm losing sleep over worrying about if we're going to make this cash flow or not. So I'm not in that position at all. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, I heard the 2.3, just thinking, as we step our way up there. And obviously the other thing that anytime you make a decision is we'll come back and look at, what have we learned? What's happened after that? I always say it's not the decision that you make, it's the results that happen as to the decision that you make. So, that will be a key piece that I think we all need to be looking at is this working for us? And if it's not working for us, then obviously we've got to figure out why it's not working and adjust accordingly. If our ultimate objective is still the same, which I agree that it is, we should be hiring the right people, train them appropriately, try to figure out how to retain them. If they're a qualified and a producing employee, then that really should be our objective. So, I'd be interested down the road, obviously, of, how is this working for us and what adjustments need to be made, if any. So,
We agree, along the lines of Trish. I mean, we want to know that answer too, and that's something Chris is certainly on board. Go research that going forward and figure out what spending it and what can we do in addition to pay to make this work. Because pay is not the only answer. We all know that. It is the culture. It is advertising properly to the right generations in their language and not just in our language. And these are all the things we're constantly working on, trying to improve to get the best solution we can for the city of Granbury.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
On that, Michael, is it possible to have a third party, I don't know what the cost would be, it probably would be worth looking into, do a completely anonymous survey of employees to determine what is important to them? Because I do know that there are a lot of people who have stayed and worked in Granbury with less pay. Again, I'm not advocating for no raises, I am just stating a fact. There are several people in Granbury who have chosen to stay here because they don't have to commute to Fort Worth. They don't have the busy traffic life. They get to be home with their families in the evening, and that is much more valuable than the dollar. And that's why people stay for a very long time, not just in the public sector, but in the private sector as well. And I would love to see not us doing this survey so that employees can feel extremely comfortable doing this, no names, no numbers, whatever that looks like. I don't know how to do that. That's not my expertise. But to get some really good data on what is important, and maybe that's where we start making that shift on offering what you're looking to offer. And that's how we retain those employees and how we recruit those employees, because we're giving them what they need. Right now, we're looking at throwing money at people, and we don't even know if that's the problem, in my own opinion.
Yep, that's why we hired professionals to help us. We're not experts in all of this.
What Matt has done is great.
Yeah.
I appreciate what he's done. He's worked very hard on this, and I know that they're a very professional firm and they know what they're doing. This is a whole different arena. This is, what do your employees want? What do they see that they would choose to change if they could?
Right.
What kind of a voice do they have, Well,
a lot of this is why you hire Chris and the rest of us is to find those things out for you. But I mean, if it's an independent approach, we can certainly talk about that if that's Chris's. But we can we'd asked if we could get through this item tonight and come back and talk about that in more detail, or something with council, or whatever Chris is feeling. If you have any opinions, Chris, on that.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
I think the big hesitation, Michael, is that once we make this decision, we can't go back. We only can go forward from this point on.
We think that's where we are.
it's a huge decision that we're making up here, because we implement this and we're like, yeah, that's probably not the right decision, so we're just going to go back to 60th percentile. Nobody's going to, the council's not going to be the council if you do that. So I understand Trish's logic and her understanding of what we need to do. I think we need to do it going forward. In my eyes, it should be an upside, it should be like a pyramid where the highest percentage is being paid on the bottom, and the percentage gets less and less as it goes up top. And the reason for my thought about that, and I'll tell you, is because if you do 100% raise for a guy that's making, $10, that's different than a guy making $100,000 at 1%. There's a big difference. So that's why I say that it should be a pyramid, and I don't know if that's the right answer, but I do agree with you. I'm not an expert in this, and that's why we hire experts to do this for us and give us some kind of guidance. I mean, I don't know what we're trying to accomplish tonight, and I don't know if 60th percentile would help in helping with the budget and make you feel comfortable, Trish, but maybe that's the answer. Go to 60th and then look at this and then go back and say, and then do what Chris is wanting to do, is increase it later in 2 years. I don't know if that's the answer.
We still have the recommendation in front of you, council, that the staff supports, so whatever you'd like, it's your.
We have a study that we commissioned, paid good money for, and Matt, I echo what I've heard up here tonight. Thank you for the study. The study shows that the city is not competitive with other cities. And yes, people stay with us for different reasons other than money. But, it's not competitive across these task ranges. Performances or, job responsibilities. We have lost 25% of our staff throughout the year. And we have paid overtime or not had some task completed that we thought that we would complete way past last year. And we've identified tasks that we're going to do this year. I'm not in favor of delaying this decision. It is a decision to spend 3% of the money and to spend 3% of our budget, not just 3% of the increase of the sales tax. But I assure you, what those sales tax and those hot taxes have meant to this city, those taxes will diminish because the sales will diminish if we don't maintain the city. And these are the people that maintain the city, and these are the rates that other cities have said, yeah, that's what we have to pay. That's the skill set. That's what's required. So I'm not really in favor of delaying this unless we're also willing to sit back and say, okay, we have a plan, we have a budget, we have a strategic plan where we want to go. We spent hours doing that, and we have been monitoring against that. Based on that plan and based upon this continued performance with turnover, take these things out. So you have to choose. We have to choose. I'm through preaching.
Final comment from your city manager. We are a great community. We have so many things going for us. The growth continues to grow. We are not in a recession in Granbury, Texas. Sales tax continues to increase every month. Property tax values continue to increase every year. We are a bustling economy. Ray Perryman, the nation's leading economist, has predicted and forecasted that Texas is going to weather the storm just fine and continue to grow, and that all the jobs created in Texas are more or 60% of all the jobs created in the whole nation, and people continue to move here because of that, and the economy continues to grow. We're not going to suffer like the Northeast or like the state of California or some of these other states that are shrinking in the economy. So Texas is strong. Texas is growing. Legislature's in the process of figuring out a way to relieve more property tax for the school tax for the citizens. So, you know, we've got the lowest tax rate in the region, $1.72 per 100. People are going to move here. They're going to continue to move here. We got a moratorium under place, and they're still moving here. They're still developing. They're developing out in the county. They're developing in the ETJ. They're developing all around us. They're developing in the city where they're vested. And we've got $1 billion worth of economic growth coming our way still with the moratorium. So we've made a recommendation to you. We can only say that this is our recommendation. We can agree to disagree. If y'all vote it down, that's fine. We'll move on, do what you want us to do. But it's our job to provide salary benefits that are comparable, that are fair and equitable internally, externally. And I can't help but think that because somebody is willing to work here under circumstances described, that we should take advantage of them. And that's the way I feel. If you got somebody that'll work for you for $12 an hour, why don't we exploit that and let's just keep them at $12 an hour? And that's not right whenever the inflation rate is 8%. It's not right. It's not fair. It takes land, labor, and capital to make money. We're not in the money-making business. We're in the service-providing business for our citizens so that they can make money. Why can't our employees be paid a fair why can't our employees make as much as somebody that works at Taco Casa? Why can't they? Why can't the guy that's working at the water treatment plant or the sewer plant make as much there as he can at Taco Casa? That's all I'm saying. We've got to be fair. We've got to be equitable. We've got people that are making $20 an hour. We've got people that are making $30 an hour. We've got people like me that are making the highest wage there is. You know, we're not talking about me. We're talking about everybody else. And here's another thing. Like I showed y'all in executive session, there's people out there trying to recruit my people. They've done it at every level. And we've got to be able to give them our best and let them know we appreciate them. And this is a token of appreciation. I've put it together, $1.7 million. It's not 2.3. It's 1.7. I believe that we will be able to sustain it in our budget going forward because we're not shrinking. We're not condensing. People are coming here. They're still building houses. They're still growing our economy. So that's all I got. We made a recommendation to you. Let's quit messing with it, and y'all take care of business however you want. So.
Well, I do want to. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr.
No, I just wanted to comment, Chris. I don't think there's one person up here that will dispute that we need to pay the guys that are making $12 an hour more. Not one person. I need everybody to understand that. And it is about everybody in our employ. It is about people up at the upper management level, and so we are talking about everybody. I just want to clarify that. Well, you mentioned that we weren't talking about everybody.
About me.
We're talking about everybody.
Well, that's fine too. Please include that in the motion. I'll be happy to receive it, but tonight I want y'all to be very clear. Y'all deal with me later on in my contract, and I'm not part of this. I want this for our employees. So
I just wanted to be clear that we are trying to do the right thing. And we want to make sure that our employees are paid for the job that they do.
I also want to be clear that I am very appreciative of everybody on council. I appreciate speaking up, asking the right questions, asking the hard questions. And, you know, we agree, disagree, we're still the council, okay? And we're going to move forward. Anybody else have a question for Michael or Chris or Matt? Okay. We'll move right along, and I believe the agenda item is that we will consider approving a new employee compensation plan for the city of Granbury and adopting ordinance number 22-70, amending the operating budget for the general fund and utility fund for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Corrigan makes a motion. Do I hear a
Second.
second? Mr. Wadley makes a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Nay.
I hear one nay, Ms. Burwell, and I hear 5 ayes. The motion passes. Thank you all very much. Okay, we're now moving to 8.0. That is, we will be going into executive session. I now declare that the Granbury City Council is convened into open session, that all members are present. The City Council will go into closed session pursuant to provisions of Texas Government Code in accordance with the authority contained in the following sections. 551071, consultation with attorney pending or contemplated litigation. 551072, deliberation regarding real property, amend the current agreement to extend the lease for Visit Granbury offices located at 201 East Pearl, and section 551087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations. So we are now in executive session. I now declare that the Granbury City Council reconvenes into open session. There was no taken in closed session, and all council members are present. There being no further business, I announce the meeting adjourned.